find different ways to get people to come together, and not just come together, but come together regularly. In the listening, their first 6 months on the ground, the questions were born out of that first quantitative session, the listening session, where we listened to the 20 million conversations, the 2 million people. We formed questions about purpose and kindness and community. And so I would go to folks, 22, 45, male, female, employed, unemployed, it didn't matter. And I would ask them questions about, what are you doing for community? What is your example of community? What are the things that you subscribe to that give you value? How do you see kindness in your life played out? Do you know why you're on this earth? From those questions, we began building this kind of meta-narrative that followed along with the research. And so my job then was to begin to create these experiences, groups, activities that people might come to. We started out in a really traditional way, a traditionalist way, where the pastor or the local expert would come in with a program and say, I'm going to do something. I'm going to put a nice coat of paint on it. We're going to call it Pop Culture Happy Hour. We're going to do it at a cool place. We're going to do something neat. We're going to use the metaphors and the teachings of modern pop culture. We're going to ask questions like, is Taylor Swift appropriating rap culture with her new album? Because it felt relevant. And so we would hold events like this. And we would learn that while it was interesting, it wasn't enough to keep people around. The content wasn't the king for us at that time. So we tried a number of different experiences, a number of different gatherings. I'm trying to hurry up so we get to an interactive part. But the more we dug, the more we found that the research, especially on the back end with our test online community, really gave us this understanding of what people needed and how they needed to be connected in the first place. Those key findings about what they want. They want something interesting. They want something that's contextual to them. They want something where they can connect with other people. They want an opportunity to give back. They don't want to be told. They want someone to help them explore. So in the past 5 to 6 months, we've tailored a lot of our programming around those types of opportunities and experiences, where we focus on opportunities for them to connect with each other socially, and then invite them to something that allows them to experience in a low barrier way an action of kindness or of compassion. And from there, we're now building this momentum, this core base of folks who we are starting to see come back regularly. Folks who would not choose church. Folks who are not going to choose church as their primary community. They are choosing what we are offering as their primary community. And they are finding those places of purpose and compassion and experiencing those places of growth that we were hoping they would find. Coffee shops, bars, homes sometimes, but more often public spaces.
Hiking trails.
Nonprofit organizations. Yeah. Emptied out laundromats that are being refurbished. Just anywhere.
The laundromat comment is we've made a connection with it's called they consider themselves a nonprofit laundromat and community center. It's called Social Spin Laundromat. It was started by a woman who saw a need in the community of folks in need living in neighborhoods that don't have a lot of services or community oriented spots, don't have washers and dryers at home, so they go to the laundromat, and the laundromat becomes this sort of neighborhood gathering place. She created Social Spin, no connection to what we're doing, but she's made started these laundromats that offer a place to do laundry for cheaper than a usual laundromat, but also they provide, they bring in social service partners, they provide job training, they provide job recruiting, I think. Folks can come in and interview or meet with recruiters to do job stuff. And then they do a lot of things for teens and kids in the community. So we partnered with them. They've been doing a big clothing drive. We partnered with them for our folks to bring clothing donations down on Saturday morning. We had a DJ there because we're hip.
Yeah.
We're relevant. And a bunch of donuts and coffee. Yeah. And folks can come in, drop off their donations, learn about what we were doing, learn about what Social Spin was doing, and we look forward to partnering with them on future events. But we sort of had a need where we have folks who are looking to give back, and they were looking for folks who wanted to give back, and we got together and combined our resources and our efforts and solved each other's problems. So that's what we are. We're problem solvers.
All right, so the question was about when I say give back, what does that mean? Service opportunity, service project. We found, especially on the ground when I was listening to folks in our cities, is that there is a desire to be kind, but not a self-assurance that they themselves are kind people. And so what we felt like and are now experiencing in a lot of really good areas is that we're creating low barrier, very simple walk in, walk out activities of kindness, almost to some of you who've done and spent years really serving in gritty, hard areas doing hard work. This seems almost elementary. But we created an assembly line inside of a coffee shop in North Scottsdale that had travel size toothpaste, deodorant, hand lotion, and we just created an assembly line, invited people to come between the hours of 6 and 8. We called it happy hour for a cause. Come, get a coffee or drink, meet some other folks, and help us help us by taking a bigger plastic bag and putting these nice little hygiene items into it. And we will deliver it to Justice Center. We'll do all the heavy lifting. Even that time, we sponsored the buying of all of those products. We had 26 folks showed up because they just wanted something simple to learn that practice of being kind. What we're learning is people don't know their potential in being kind, and this is an important part of their journey. Thank you. Do we ever get to a point where we work towards their understanding of God? Yeah, when they want it, when they're ready for it. There are folks who are part of our community that may never ask that question, and there are folks who come into our community and say, I used to be religious, the church turned me off, but I still very much have big questions about God. We're kicking off a new series this week called Doubt Night. We're inviting everyone with a spiritual spectrum or spiritual understanding to come and let's talk. So let's talk about doubt. Let's talk about the bigger things in life. So we very much have the space, and we're prepared to handle it for when they are ready.
And we've had a couple false starts with groups of folks who have come and said, I'm looking for a Bible study. Like, I'm out of institutional religion, but I want to do Bible study with other folks who want to study the Bible. And we've had a few 6-week stints of doing those types of groups. And then for people moving out of town or work schedules changing and stuff, those folks have dispersed. They usually come back in different ways or whatever. But that's definitely a big demographic. We found that, we still, in our ministry plan, we'll have hiking groups, we'll have happy hour for a cause, and we'll have doubt night, and we'll have Bible study.
I think one of the learnings that we're developing, especially with the folks who specifically want to have this spiritual God-focused engagement, is that it's highly contextual. So we did a 6-week study on anxiety and where we find peace in God on anxiety. Joy was another topic. But after 6 weeks, it was dealt with. We needed to find something else for them. So I think what I see developing is something that's much more contextual. It's not a lifelong commitment to showing up every Wednesday at 6 p.m., but it is.
It's got to have as many of these things and as many of those things. So it's still got to be, if you want me to commit, it's still got to be interesting. It can't be interesting for a minute, and then I commit to it, and then it's not interesting anymore. And I think that speaks globally more from a we're bombarded by, we're never bored anymore. We're just constantly bombarded by whatever's on our phones, whatever's on Netflix. We're just constantly like, we have very few moments where we just kind of sit around and take in what's going on around us. You know, if we sat at 20 years ago, if you sat at a bus stop, you'd have to sit there and pay attention to your surroundings. Now, or in an airport, you're waiting for a flight, you would do people watching, right? That's still one of my favorite things to do. But if you go in, and I travel a lot, I'll be in an airport tomorrow, and when I put my phone down or my iPad down, I'll look up and literally everyone else in the airport will be doing this, doing that. Interest me, interest me, interest me, interest me. So our competition, if as churches and as explorer concepts and whatever, is less other institutions and more trying to keep people from being bored, but at the same time, that's not healthy either. So it's finding this balance between, is it interesting, but are we also moving folks into healthy community, which is a lot better for our brains than the constant bombardment of keep me from being bored. And I have 2 little kids, and that's every 5, I'm bored.
I'm able to have that conversation with some of the folks that we engage with, and I joke with them that my competition is Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
It's really me getting you off of the couch. You know you need community with other people, and you know that you know what's best. You believe you know what's best for you. That's cool. I want to create that environment. Now, how do I get you from binging?
But the general rule is that folks move along the continuum as they go. I would say, just off the top of my head, it's more, my experience anyway, is that folks could start out to be traditionalists and then become explorers and then even go back to being traditionalists. But explorers, I would think, are less likely to move radically towards a traditional side. I think other sociological research and stuff would say that as we get older, we get a little more traditionalist like anyway. But, you know, I know some folks from the 60s who are still, you know, they're older and they're explorers. This one is, there's a lot of unknown here because, again, we're still unpacking this and seeing how it plays out on the ground. But again, and you know, that's a general conference is going to happen in 3 weeks, and then there'll be another general conference in a year. So there's all that swirling around. For me personally, I think we've just abdicated our responsibility to have been looking at this problem and looking into the future and sort of iterating and innovating slowly, little steps at a time, to where we've gotten to an emergency point because we said, we kind of ignored this for however many years. And now, like, oh, it's starting to affect people's jobs, our church buildings, our apportionments, our institution, and now we should deal with it. There's nothing in this research that could fix our institution in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years, probably in 10 years. This is all stuff that we're still figuring out, and if we take learning seriously and start instituting step by step, piece by piece, and making some radical changes maybe in some places, that will have effects 30, 40, 50 years from now. But I think the good news is again, there's still lots and lots of people who want to go to church. And we didn't look at best practices on what makes an amazing church because we're looking at some other stuff. But we think, and this is a good segue into our activity here, we think by understanding traditionalists and explorers and everybody in between can help us think more thoughtfully and more intentionally about who we are as individual churches and how we reach people and how we might make some changes or tweaks within our existing institutions. So sorry that I wish, if I had the answer to that, I'd be on world tour right now and writing a lot of books, but it's soon, it'll happen soon, but yeah. So the name of our concept is called Social Thread. Thread, like thread, going off the idea of our society has a social fabric, and our social fabric is only as strong as the individual threads, that's you. The stronger we are as individuals, the stronger our community is. And we call ourselves a faith community. We don't call ourselves a church. Organizationally, think of it as like a Wesley Foundation or a campus ministry, where it's a little more looser, explorer-oriented, and created for people at a particular stage or phase of life, maybe versus you know, an institution you would join and take a membership class and all those kinds of things. We see it as something people might move in and out of throughout their lives, but it fills a gap where someone says, I grew up, I went to church, I stopped going to church in college, I don't want to go to church again, but I miss that community and I miss having a space where I can explore. We work with who we have, and that includes some families with older kids, not necessarily a lot of families with younger kids. There have been times. Families, again, work best when you have other, again, you're going to grow around kind of whoever you're gathering, because that'll attract more people who are like those people. So if these are mid-career professionals, then if you build a critical mass of those folks, they're naturally going to attract other mid-career professionals. And that's, yep. We have a website. We do a lot of like Google ads around people who are Googling like new in town, looking for things to do, how do I make friends, weekend activities, give back opportunities, volunteer opportunities. Those push people to the website where we have an email list and all of our events listed, where you can also click and RSVP through meetup.com, which is a really cool website that helps people organize events and helps people find things to do. And I would say Meetup right now is our #1 way we are connecting with new people. And then we depend a lot on word of mouth. We don't do as much. There's a lot of issues these days with Facebook and other things like that. We have a presence there, and we try to keep that more, hey, here's this event, we hope you'll come, or here's a picture from this event, this is what we've been doing, and less instructional or posting articles or things like that. We try to keep it organic and community oriented. Like, no, we do not have a space. Yeah, our space is partnerships with other spaces. Yeah. It's just, I think it's not, I don't think to me, the research doesn't say don't use the word pastor. It just tells us that we have a lot of work to do to keep that in mind when we are interacting with folks, because pastor to a traditionalist is like, absolutely. One of the questions I get from folks, from pastors, is after they see that presentation is, oh, so I should stop wearing my collar. And I say, well, it depends on who you're trying to connect with. If you are known as the pastor in the community, and there's a lot of people who want and need a pastor, and they want to be approachable in the community as a pastor, wear your collar, please. If you're trying to reach explorers in your community, then, you know, unless you're looking for a provocative conversation starter, wearing a collar probably isn't what you want to do. But at the same time, never ever like pretend you're not a pastor. Talk about all the programs, all the things you do at your church, and how they and where they fall on the Traditionalist Explore continuum. As you talk about your different programs and stuff, let's all figure out together what buckets they fall into.
Traditional adult Bible study.
So adult Bible study, where do we think that falls? And you call it traditional. Why do you call it a traditionalist adult Bible study? Sunday morning classes. Okay. There's a teacher up in front of the group, and there's a curriculum, and okay.
Well, Barb, you should speak. We have some that are more traditional that get good attendance, and some that aren't as traditional that get sporadic attendance.
Okay. And you said they're church and society?
Yeah, or the topics.
Huh. So they focus more on like social issues. Okay. I don't know. You guys tell me too if you think I've picked the wrong. Because I don't really know. I mean, we're all figuring this out together. So if I'm picking a wrong category and the group overrides me, then please. All right. So let's throw age out of this. That was kind of the big twist in the presentation was let's just throw age out of it for right now. So I think you're right on with. So you would call let's call that a visit to learn about a nonprofit. Is that, or was there a hands-on component? Okay, you made donations. Okay. What do we want to call that? And we think that's an explorer-oriented program. What do we want to call the, okay, service outreach to prison nonprofit? Okay. What's that? Oh, it's a government agency. Oh, okay. Okay, the prison system. I thought I heard organization in there. Okay, okay. Right. Yeah, for our purposes, we'll say if it's a social government versus nonprofit, we'll kind of call that it's helping other people, something that provides a social service. Okay. Okay, care ministry. Shut-in visit ministry, visiting people in the hospital, shut-ins, partnership with Duet, which is like a services for, that's right, they provide rides for people to go to the hospital. And if I'm over describing something, it's for the online folks. Cool. So where would we put that?
But if you're reaching people who aren't.
It's traditional kinds of things.
Okay.
Community has done.
But if an explorer saw a news story about this church that goes and visits people in the hospital and helps organize rides for shut-ins to go to the grocery store and stuff, what do you think they would think about that? Or even here?
The traditional
Okay.
people do it, but it's reaching possibly.
If I'm in the neighborhood around here, how many of your neighbors do you think know that this church offers that awesome ministry? So Stephen, for folks online, their conversation centered around they probably do a lot of stuff that explorers would find interesting and might connect with, but they have no way of knowing about it because the only way they talk about it is within the traditionalist context. Right. So if the explorers would just come pick up that church newsletter and check it out. Yeah. Yeah. But can you see, so this is what I'm trying to get at. I think this example nails it, is now that you know of the continuum, and again, we're making this up as we go, but it's helping us have the conversation of how do we, if nobody knows this exists, then, and your neighbors don't know this exists, then why would they come be part of the church? Because you haven't told them about it. It kind of helps us know, like, oh, okay, like we actually do a lot of things that might hit one or both of these groups, but because we've been thinking in this box, we haven't even realized, we haven't even been telling these folks about it. Story. And in today's world, the primary way we tell our story is through online and digital media. And we can't just tell it, it has to be interesting, it has to be compelling, and it has to be done with excellence. So her idea is how do we professionalize our storytelling, our communications. Barbara's comment was, it's one thing to tell people about it, but we need to have things to tell people about. And I think what most people will find is you are doing stuff, and you just got to figure out how to tell your story. So Court was saying at his church, they've started these kind of guys pub meetup groups where you can come meet and talk with the pastor, but you can also connect with other guys and talk about what's going on in each other's lives. And Court might offer some spiritual guidance and stuff like that. But I think I'd call that squarely an influx group with a strong ability to pull in explorers and, you know, probably pull in some traditionalists too. How would you know who's in your community? Where would you go to find that out? Stephen? Yeah, it's all multifaceted. Yes, it's communications. Yes, it's relationship. Yes, it's Bible study. Yes, it's guys group. Yes, it's habitat build. Yes, it's bell choir. But in the end, Stephen nailed it. That is, you get people in a room, but until you get them in a relationship together, you're not going to go much further. So just real quick, where would you go if you wanted to find out who's in your neighborhood? Where? Into the neighborhood? What? That's crazy talk. Okay, going out and meeting your neighbors. That's one thing. Getting involved in your community. What's
Demographics at the conference.
right? The annual conference offers a great service. It's called Mission Insight, where you can actually go and draw a square or circle right around your church, and it will tell you exactly who's there. It pulls in all the data from the census, but it also breaks it down into a bunch of subgroups that'll give you an idea of, are these traditionalists, influx explorers? They have all these kind of funky names for different groups, but I think they have like 50 different types of sociological groups that that'll give a little description that says, this group are highly religious and are looking for a church. You know, this group is, grew up religious, but are young professionals and they're looking to connect with other young professionals. And it'll tell you like 9% of these people live in your neighborhood or 10% live in your neighborhood. Dave McPherson, who is leading a workshop across the way, his office handles that, but I can also get you connected with him if you're interested. So Bob's comment was that their church is in the shadow of a large mega church, so they're trying to be the smaller church with more of that mainline feel. They're trying to lean into who they are versus who they are not. Is that what I heard? Okay, cool. And it may be there's no explorers in your context, too, or very few. You're part of this church, right? I would guess that this is still a pretty traditionalist area. I mean, CCV wouldn't be, where are they, across the freeway? Or somewhere? That way. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. Yeah. So my thing would be, before you start thinking about, okay, if we just got on Facebook and started posting cat memes, then that'll solve all our problems. You got to do really, really hard work of understanding who you are as a congregation and who your neighbors are. And until you know that, you won't know what to do from there. You won't know, okay, how do we need to shift? What programs do we need to do? And then also at the same time, this is like spinning plates. That's how hard this is. You're spinning all these plates and they all got to keep going. If one falls off, the whole thing falls apart. You gotta also then not do things to, if you're a traditionalist congregation and you're existing right now because you're a traditionalist and you're like, we got to reach the explorers, and you try to jump all the way over here to get this person, everyone leaves over here, and then you sort of are like, we got nothing left. I see that, especially among young clergy. Those are the phone calls I get, and I've experienced it myself, is young clergy tend to be more explorer and go into a traditional congregation and immediately start trying to attract explorers, and 100 people leave because they're just terrified that, like, wait a second, I came here for that. I came here for that. And you're saying you're going to go spend your time in the pub trying to reach explorers, and who's going to come visit me here? Who's going to lead my Wednesday Bible study? So everybody's equally as important. That's the thing I want everybody to walk away with is don't cut off your nose to spite your face. Yeah. So the key is understand who you are, where you fall as a congregation on that continuum, understand who your neighbors are, and then let that drive the conversation.
Quick, when I started, All of my time was dedicated on Orontes, which became Social Thread. Last year, the bishop appointed me half-time to Social Thread and half-time to North Scottsdale UMC, the church where I was before. I was a part of Orontes and Social Thread. Part of the strategic thinking in that is we do have a vested interest in some of the adult generations that have not returned to the church, and some of their families are anchored as members of our churches. You have children who don't go to church. That's the assumption. It is in one way a networking benefit to us. The leverage it gives us is that I am an established person. So in trying to ramp up participation, I can go to some of these adults who've aged out of their homes and into new phases of life, but still can invite them or learn from them. Another aspect of that is, I'd say, this influx group. I can name names just like you can. There are adults who, when their kids do leave for college, they may quit going to church. What's tying these influxers to your church? Why are they invested? One of the things I'm doing right now at North Scottsdale is working with folks that David Rennick and I are identifying as these types of folks who, based on a number of different factors, may or may not choose to be long-term in the church. What we're saying is, how do we re-engage them? And I would double down on what Stephen said. It's the time you spend with them. It's what you listen to, what's on their heart, what their hopes, what their dreams are. Letting them tell their story on their terms. It's important to all these groups. This group specifically is something I'm focusing on at North Scottsdale, and that includes my administrative work with the student and children's ministries. Because if the numbers continue, the majority of the kids that are in your church right now won't be there in 10 years. So
a big part of my job in this ministry is doing this, and is coming and meeting with churches and helping them think through these things, which is also a benefit to our project. The more we can try things and fail, the more we can have these conversations, the better answers I can have for next year's West District Day of Learning. The more we can do on the ground stuff and learn from all of you, willing to take some risk and maybe be vulnerable and whatnot, the more hard answers I can have when we have these questions. So part of this ministry, part of the funding for this ministry is to continue to have these conversations. So